Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Speed Chess Championship semifinals, which are being held here in Paris, France. Now, in the semifinals, I am competing against Ali Reza Farouj, the very talented Iranian junior player who now represents France. Now, the Speed Chess Championship a little bit different this year. It's an in-person final. You're playing on computers. There's a big fan base, crowd, I should say, who are following the games, and it's very, very hype. So, all right, to set the scene, you play 90 minutes of 5+1, you play 60 minutes of 3+1, and then 30 minutes of 1+1. Now, going to this match, I was a little bit unsure of how I should feel because in general, with most of the recent matches I've played in the Speed Chess Championship over the last 2 years, I've been able to save it in many matches in the bullet portion. A couple of matches specifically come to mind. The match against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave last year, where I think I was down by 1 or 2 points going into the bullet. The match this year against Jan Nepomniachtchi, where I pulled it out in the bullet section. So it's been a little bit iffy. Now, the big difference between this match and those matches, of course, is that even if I keep it very close until bullet, Ali Reza Farouj is a very good bullet player alongside Magnus Carlsen and myself. So let's jump right into the action. Now, I would win the first game of this match in a king's Indian with the white pieces. We drew the second game, and then I would lose the third game. Now, with so many games being played in this match, I can't really cover all of them. So we're going to start with the fifth game of the match, and I'm currently trailing by a score of 2.5 to 1.5. All right. So, in this game, I'm playing with the white pieces, sorry for the board being wrong, and here I start out with the move e4. Ali Reza plays e5, I go knight f3, knight c6, and I play the move bishop b5, and Ali Reza plays the classic Berlin defense with knight to f6. Now, Ali Reza would essay the Berlin defense throughout this match without really varying much at all. So I go d3, we get bishop c5, I decide to play the move c3, castles knight d2, and now Ali Reza plays this move d5. Now, black can also play the move d6 here as well, but Ali Reza decides to play d5 instead. I go queen e2, we get takes, and now we have the move a5, and here I play the move a4. Ali Reza goes queen e7, and now I castle my king out of the center of the board. Ali Reza plays h6, and now I go for this move knight to b3, we get bishop to b6, and here I play this move bishop e3, trying to trade off this very active dark square bishop. Ali Reza trades the bishops, and now he plays his move knight a7. Now, this is sort of the first sign that I clearly was not 100% sharp today, because after this knight a7 move was played, I immediately played this move bishop e2, and in fact, I was completely unaware that I could have taken this pawn on a5 until well after the game ended, and I was on the actual break in between the games. So, if I go knight takes a5 here, I'm simply up a pawn. After takes here, the rook guards the knight, and white is simply much better. Instead, I play the move bishop to e2, Ali Reza goes back, again guarding the pawns on e5 and c5, and now I play the move rook d1. Ali Reza goes bishop to e6, and here I play the move knight fd2, guarding my horse on the b3 square. Ali Reza plays b6, and now I go for this move bishop b5, knight a7, and I play bishop c4, trying to get a horse to this critical square. Ali Reza trades the bishops, and here he plays move queen e6, and now I go queen e2, guarding the knight on c4. Ali Reza plays rook fd8, and now I play the move knight d2, trying to overprotect the horse on c4. We get knight c6, and now I play the move knight f1, intending to play f3 and moving the knight to e3, from whence it can go to either the d5 or f5 squares. Ali Reza decides to trade the rooks here on d1, and now he plays rook d8, I trade the rooks, and I play this move f3. Now, one thing that I was trying to do in this match a lot, I obviously can't cover all the games, but one thing that I was trying to do is trying to go for these drier positions in the late middle games and end games where I felt that eventually, if I got the time low enough, I could outplay Ali Reza. So he goes knight b7. I play knight e3, he goes knight c5, and now I play the move queen d1, guarding the pawn on a4, but trying to go for queen d8 as well. And here, Ali Reza plays the move queen d7. Now, this is a surprisingly serious mistake here. What black should have played was the move queen to e8, covering the d8 square while attacking the pawn on a4. Ali Reza goes queen d7 instead. I trade the queens, and now he takes with the f knight on d7. And here I can jump to the center with this move knight d5, attacking the pawns on c7 and b6. Now, if black were to go c6 here, I have knight to e7 check, hitting the king and the pawn, and white should be up a pawn in this endgame. Doesn't mean, actually, sorry, not knight e7, I'm blind. Knight takes b6 is the move, taking the pawn on b6, and now you guard a4, and you can come back to c4. That's going to be a nice little blooper on this video. So, after knight d5, Ali Reza takes on a4, and now I go knight takes c7, and here he plays move f6, and now I bring my king to the center. Now, in this position, both sides have the same number of pawns, with 6 pawns each here, but at this point, white's a little bit better because the knight can come to d5 or b5, and this knight on a4 is very awkwardly placed. I intend to kick it away with b3 sooner or later. So, we get knight c5. I go king e2. we get h5, and now I go king d2, and here Alireza plays the move knight to b3. Now at this point, black is simply completely lost, because if you go king f7, I can go king c2 here with the idea of, say, g6, b3 here, trapping the horse on a4. So, in this position, we get the move knight b3, king c2, knight a1, king b1, knight b3, and here I play the move king to a2. Now, you will notice that in this game, I'm already up a minute and a half on the clock, but Alireza still is putting up pretty serious resistance. So I go king a2, get knight c1, king a3, he goes here, I take, and now he plays knight d3, trying to go for either knight f4 or knight to e1 to win these pawns on the king side. Here I go knight d5, we get king f7. If black were to play knight e1, I do just go knight e3, guarding the pawn on g2. So we get king f7. I play knight e3, Alireza plays g5, and now I play the move knight c4, attacking the pawn on a5. Alireza plays a4, and here I go knight b6 back, trying to win this pawn on a4. Alireza plays g4, and at this point already, I was a little bit unsure of myself. I actually felt during the game that I should have played h3 to stop this g4 idea, but I played knight b6, and he goes g4. Now, maybe this is sort of a sign of how the match would go, or sort of foreshadowing, but even here, up a minute on the clock and in a position that should be winning, I still was very nervous and very unsure about exactly what was going on. So I take on a4, we get the trade, he takes on f3, takes on b2, and now I go king b5, and at this point, I'm winning the game because I can simply push the c-pawn straight up the board. So Alireza goes king e6, I play c4, knight d3, c5, and now he plays the move knight e1, desperately trying to go after the kingside pawns, but here I can simply push the pawn to c6, and now Alireza resigns this game, because if he were to play knight takes pawn, I can go king b6 here, and after, say, knight d4, I push p with c7, king d7, king b7, I make a queen, and I win the game. So, the pawn is unstoppable here. Now, this is a very, very big win for me. This tied the matchup at 2.5, 2.5, and we now move to the 6th game of the match. So, one of the things that can often happen in Speed Chess Championship is that players try to stick to systems throughout the match. If a system is able to hold up, let's just say like the Berlin, for example, it makes it very difficult on the opponent, because then they have to change their openings. If, however, your defense with the black piece does not hold up, it can get pretty ugly in a hurry. So Alireza goes e4, I go e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, and now he plays bishop a4. Here I play bishop c5 as same classic system that I played in the candidates as well as Norway chess. Alireza goes c3, I play knight e7, and here he plays the move d4. Now, since I do believe this is going to be the last game that we're going to recap in this specific opening system, if I'm not mistaken, actually I should check. I do want to point out that later in the match, Alireza would actually change. He would go for the system with castles, knight e7. Actually, no, we will look at another game with this system. What am I talking about? So he would change up a little bit later. Now, the first 10 games or so, he would start out with the system with c3 and d4, bishop b4, knight c3, d5, e5, and bishop g4, a3, bishop a5, and now the move bishop e3. Now, this position occurred in multiple games in the match. Eventually, he would switch, but he started off with a specific system. So here I go b5. Now, it's worth pointing out, I believe in the 4th game of the match, which I did lose, I played the line which the computer says is best, which is castles, and after h3, takes, f6, takes, queen d1, I played this move knight f5, Alireza played b4, I traded here, sacked the knight, and after queen to b3 in this position, I ended up making a big mistake. I played the move queen d6, Alireza would castle his king, and go on to win the game. Now, it's hard to prepare in between the games, because really the only preparation you can do is pretty much looking at the computer where you're sitting and playing. I did notice later on one of the breaks that the computer actually thinks black is better here after queen f8, castle, and this very unusual idea b5, because after takes, bishop a3 check, king c2, rook f2, and rook d2. Apparently after king h8, black is better, but is this realistic to find without knowing and having to prepare on the fly? Very, very unlikely. So after losing that game, I ended up switching back to b5, which I played in the first black game. We got bishop c2, bishop b6, knight e2, and now I play the move queen d7. Alireza plays rook c1, and here I trade the bishop for the knight, sort of damaging white's kingside pawns. On the other hand, however, white has the bishops, a closed center here. You can go for rook g1 or knight g3, and white does have adequate counterplay. So I castle my queen to the queen side here, trying to play for f6 or knight f5 to open up the center of the board. Alireza plays f4, and now I go f6 here. We get the move bishop d3, and here I go king b7. Alireza plays the move rook g1, and now I go for the move g6 here. And at this point, I felt very, very comfortable with the position. I actually thought I was doing very well. So Alireza takes, I go knight to f5 here. White is temporarily up a pawn on f6, but there's some serious weakness in the center of the board. My king on b7 actually quite safe here, and I can bring the rook to e8 pretty much immediately. So we get takes, Alireza plays a4, and now I play this move queen f6. Here I probably should have played the move b4 to keep the queen side closed, but again, it's a tricky spot, and I decided to play this move relatively quickly. Takes, we got the move queen d3, and now I play the move rook hg8. Alireza goes king f1, and here I play the move b4. Alireza goes rook g5, and now I play the move knight e7. We get knight to g3 here, and now we make a short little repetition where we go back and forth before Alireza plays rook e5. Now, this game I think is this game really crystallizes the match as a whole, because as you can tell from the time situation here, I am up 2 minutes on the clock. I should be able to win this game. I should put a lot of pressure on him. He's got a weak king. I have slightly easier moves, but I'm not able to, as we're going to see. So I play knight f5. Alireza goes queen b5, and here I go for the move rook f8. Alireza takes the pawn, and now I go g5, trying to attack on the f file. Now, I'm going to be honest. I think that if I had this position against anyone in the event, not named Alia Faruja and or maybe Magnus Carlsen, due to the time situation here where I'm up over about a minute and a half on the clock, I think I would have won this game very convincingly. They would have fallen apart and blundered. But Alireza is one player who, and I know I'm sort of foreshadowing some of the events, but he is one of the players who I think has become incredibly strong at finding good moves with very little time on the clock. Now, most players, when they get to 5, 6, 5, 4, 3 seconds on the clock, they immediately make mistakes. One player comes to mind, like Fabiano Caruana. In many cases, he will just blunder and lose the games. But Alireza has picked up this ability, or however he's gotten it. It could just be pure talent. He does not make such mistakes. So we get queen b5 here. I play this move queen to h6, and now Alireza goes king e1, and here I play the move knight takes e3. Now again, at this point, I am at 40 plus seconds on the clock. I should never in a million years be in a situation where I can lose this game. So I take on e3. Now I take on f4, he takes, and I decide to sack the rook with rook takes f4. We get takes, and now I decide to take the pawn. Now probably here I should have used a little bit more time and played queen h4, but instead I instantly snap. We get queen c6, king b8, and now Alireza finds rook to a1 here, trying to go for the classic checkmate with rook a8. Here I play the move queen h4, king d1, I take, he goes king c2, and now rather inexplicably, I simply make a huge blunder. I spent 20 plus seconds, and the reactive move that I play is just flat out wrong. In this position, the move that I should have played was probably queen to f2, king b3, check, king b4, and then gone queen g4 check here, because after king b5, I can play queen c4 check, takes, and at least here I have ideas like rook to d2, and there is definitely some counterplay. Instead, I play the move queen c5. I also want to point out here that another move that I probably should have considered was bishop to a7, which probably is losing, but it's a very logical move to play here. I do not think Alireza would have found the only winning move, which is rook a e1, so it's a bit of a pity I didn't play it, but more of the reason this is such a huge mistake is I simply did not see Alireza's next move here, which he spots right away, which is rook to a5, attacking the bishop and the pawn. I go bishop d6, he takes, and now I go rook to f8. I'd love to take the pawn, but then I would lose my rook on d8. So I go rook f8, he plays rook d2. Sadly, I can't play bishop b4, hitting both the rooks, because then there's rook b5 check, winning the game. So I go rook f6, rook h5, h6, still with 15 seconds versus 3. You would think that I should be able to save this game, but as we're going to see, I am not able to. Alireza plays rook e2, king b7, rook b5, king c6, rook b3. We play a bunch of waiting moves here, which I'll point out, and sooner or later we get to this moment here, where I now play bishop f4, bishop d6, and he checks, and here I go king to d7. Now, what I should have done here was probably just left the king on the b7 square, trying to just sit here, maybe go rook h5 later, but instead I play king d7. Alireza goes rook h4, I play h5, and now he goes rook e4, an excellent move which cuts my king off from going towards the center of the board. I go rook b5, rook d4, king e6, rook e3, and now I play this move king f6. Now, I probably again should have gone back to the center, but at this point with 8 seconds versus 3, I'm trying to just move very quickly and avoid blundering. So I go here, he goes here, I play bishop e5, rook f3, king e6, rook d3, and now I play king f5, we get rook c4, and I go bishop d6 back. Alireza plays rook e3, and now I play the move rook to a5, we get king f3, rook to a1, and now he plays the move king f2. I go rook a2 check, and he plays move king f3. Now, one of the sad things about this game is that as soon as I made my move rook to a1, I realized that I had this move rook to h2 here, and after rook to h2, I'm still much worse after h4, but with the pawn being fixed on this dark square, White's task of trying to win this game becomes significantly harder. Instead, I play rook a1, and now Alireza goes king e2. I check, he goes king d3, and now I play the move rook h2. Alireza plays rook f3 check, an excellent move here, because now if I run with the king away to the e file, there's rook to h4, winning the pawn on h5 and the game as well. So I go king g5, but now Alireza plays rook e4, I play rook h1, and he plays move king c4, starting to bring the king up the board to d5 and e6 with rook f5. Here I play king g6. After thinking for 4 seconds, he goes king d5, I go here, king e6, play king g6 back, he goes rook f6, and now I blunder the game on the spot with king g5. But even if I were to go king g7 here, there probably are multiple ways for white to win. I thought there was something better than rook f3, but I guess rook f3 is best, and after king g6 here, white probably should play h4, followed by rook to f6, and there's probably some way to win on the king side. Instead, I go king g5, and now Alireza spots the winning move h4, because the only way to avoid it being checkmate is to take the pawn, but after rook to f5 checking the king here, when I move my king, I lose the rook on h4, and with it, I lose the game. So, I resign in this position after rook f5. This was a very critical game, I would say, and really sort of epitomizes the match as a whole, because going into this game, the match was tied. Now, I was up 1 minute and 50 seconds to 30 seconds. I had 45 seconds at some point later on. Even at the end, I had 15 seconds versus 3 seconds, and Alireza's technique was spectacular. I frankly would say that it was godlike, for lack of a better way of putting it. And this really, I think, epitomized much of the match, because in many cases, Alireza would get very low on time, but even though he had seconds left, he would still find very, very good and precise moves. All right, that being said, the match is tied 2.5, 2.5. Now, he wins this game, he would actually go on to win 2 more to take a 5.5, 2.5 lead. And this game, I'm not sure which game it was, but it was a 3+1. Actually, I do remember. So Alireza was ahead by a score, I believe. He was ahead by 2 points after the 5+1. In the first game of the 3+1, I had a miracle victory, and I'm down 6-5 going into this game. It's only a 1-point margin, so the match is extremely close. So, once again, we got this classic Spanish here with bishop a4, bishop c5, and the move c3. Now, what I was going to point out is that later in the match, Alireza would switch up his variation. He would eventually end up playing this line with takes, d4, b5, bishop b3, takes, d6, f4, c5, and the move queen to d2. Now, unfortunately for me, it's been a while since I prepared this specific variation. I did play it in the candidate, so obviously it's something that I have looked at. But I do want to point out that I would lose, I think, 2 or 3 games very quickly in this line after knight g6 and the move c4. I got a lot of very bad positions, and I would just fall apart. And that was one thing that started going against me later on. But in this game, this variation did not happen. Instead, Alireza continued to stick with c3 and d4. So I go here, I play knight g6, we get d4, bishop a7, here, castles, and this, of course, is the position I had against Jan Nepomniachtchi in the candidates tournament in April in Toronto. So we get rook fe1, I play king h8, h3 here, and now I go knight c7. Worth pointing out that in the Bullet Chess Championship, I think at the very end of that match, I played this line with takes d5, takes, knight c3, and after queen to d8 and d5, I believe it was, I got some very bad positions, and it would cost me that match. At any rate, I play this move knight c7, he plays the move c4 here, trying to stop me from playing d5, and now I go for this move d6. Alireza plays knight c3, I trade on d4, takes, and now I play this move knight to e5, and here Alireza goes knight d2. Now, once again, like in that previous game, I actually realized as soon as I played this move knight g6, I was thinking to myself, why didn't I just go g5 to stop f4, followed by knight g6 and knight f4, using these knights? If I had done this, who knows what would have happened. Instead, I play knight g6, and now Alireza is able to go queen e3 with the idea of f4 kicking the knight out of the e5 square. Here I play the move bishop e6, we get bishop b3, bishop g8, f4, I go knight d7, knight f3, and now I play the move knight c5. Alireza goes knight d4, and now I play this move rook e8, trying to pressure the pawns on e4 and f4. He goes queen d2, I play c6, we get knight f5, and now I play the move queen b6, trying to pressure on the b file as well as the long diagonal. Alireza plays king h1, I go rook d8, and now he plays the move rook a d1. Here I play the move rook to d7, we get the move queen to f2, and now I go queen c7, guarding the pawn on d6. Alireza plays h4, and now I play the move knight e7, and you will notice here that I'm up 20 seconds on the clock, and I am a little bit better. That being said, the moves here are a little bit easier for white to play because white just waits in the center while preparing e5 or h5, h6, and I have to come up with a plan. So I go for knight c8 here, he plays h5, and now rather inexplicably I play this horrible move knight to b6. What I should have played here, disregarding the classic computer line, which is knight b3, is I should have played the very simple h6 move with the idea of bishop to h7, pressuring the pawn on e4, or keeping the bishop on g8 and pressuring the pawn on c4. But I play the move knight b6, and now Alireza plays h6, and at this point, now my kingside pawns are very loose. If I take on h6, which I didn't do in the game, there's knight f5, d6 and h6 are very weak here. The position feels very, very shaky for me, and so I play the move g6 instead. But now after knight to f3, there are going to be some issues on this long diagonal. So I go rook f8, Alireza plays queen d4, I go knight e6, queen e3, and here I play the move rook to e7, and Alireza plays e5, trying to open up this long diagonal. So I take, go knight d7, he takes, and now I play knight takes f6, and here Alireza finds a brilliant move, knight to e4. Now I'm going to be honest, at this point, after knight takes f6, I thought I was doing very well in the game. I'm up 30 seconds on the clock here, and I thought I was in great shape, but once Alireza found knight e4, this move really stopped me in my tracks, because I did not expect it at all. So I end up playing the move knight e4, which is a bad move here. I should have gone queen to f4 probably. The reason I didn't play it, even though I thought for a long time, is I thought after takes, there's the move rook to e8 here, and I thought with ideas like c5 coming in, I'm probably losing. Amazingly, computer says after g5, I think if white goes c5, takes, king g1, there's now knight to d5 here, and after knight g5 and rook g6, white is still significantly better, but the game actually is not over. Is this easy to find? I frankly think it's almost impossible. So instead I trade the knights on e4, I go queen f4, he takes, and now he plays the move c5, I go rook f8 here, and Alireza makes a mistake with this move rook e5. Computer here says that after knight g5, white simply is winning on the spot. If I take the horse, I lose the rook. If I go rook e8, now white can simply trade everything off on e6 here, and after I take, there is simply the move rook to d8, checkmating the black king on h8. So Alireza goes rook e5 instead. Now at this point, time is very close, but I play the move rook to f5, which just loses here. I should have played the move rook e8, and if white goes rook e1, I at least have the move knight c7 to try and survive. But instead at this point, I simply go rook f5, hoping for something good to happen. Now here Alireza plays rook e4, which is still winning, but actually sacking the rook with rook takes e6 would win on the spot. Because if I take with the rook, now there's rook to d8, pinning the bishop and the king. And after rook f6, white can go knight g5 here. And if I check, after king h2, there's simply too much pressure here. I'll lose the bishop on g8 and get checkmated. Instead, we get rook e4. I go rook h5, king g1, I take, and now he plays rook e1. And here, at least after rook to h5, all the pieces come off the board here, but I do have 2 pawns here in return for the horse, so there are some small chances to maybe survive the game. We get rook e7. I go b5, king f2, and now I play the move g5. And here Alireza starts to go in a slightly wrong direction with the move g4. Not a big deal yet, but here I think if white had played knight to knight to d4, I think white is simply winning in this position because the knight stops rook c2 while pressuring the pawn on c6, and knight f5 exists as well. So instead we get g4. Here I play the move h6, Alireza goes knight d4, and now I have the move rook c4 attacking the knight and the pawn. We get knight to f5, and now I have h5 here because if white takes, there's rook to f4 winning the horse. Instead, knight, we get rook g7, king f8 takes, and now I play the move rook c2. We have king e3, h takes g4, and at this point, you'll notice the evaluation bar has gone all the way down to 0. I have turned a completely lost game into a drawn position, I should say. So you get b4. I play the move rook c4, a3, I go a5. The goal here, of course, is to liquidate the pawns, because if it's rook and knight versus rook, the endgame is a draw. So you get takes, rook a4, a6, rook a6, king d4, and now I play the move rook a3, and here Alireza goes king e5. Now, it's very, very important to keep in mind that in the previous game where I was completely lost, I basically got really lucky where Alireza had 2 to 3 seconds, and he ran out of time. He made a couple of mistakes and turned it from a win into a loss. Now, it's very important to keep in mind as far as this game goes, because at this point, I know the position should be a draw, but here I lose a little bit of the objectivity. I'm trying too hard to play for a win and hopefully flag him. Now, nothing is wrong with b4 specifically, but what I should have played here was a move c5, and the reason I should have done this is if white ever tries to bring the king to f6, I have rook a6 check. If he goes here, check knight d6, b4. White can never checkmate with the knight and the rook being configured like this. Instead, I go b4. Alireza takes, I go b3, and now he plays move rook b4, and here I play this move rook to a5, which maybe is still a draw, but it's not actually the move I should have played. What I should have done once again was gone c5 here to free the 6th rank for the rook to check the white king if it ever moves forward. Instead, I go rook a5, and now we get king to f6, and here I blunder with this move rook to b5, again losing the objectivity and trying to keep the game going. if I play the move king to e8 here and I escape to d7, if white goes king e6, I can simply go king to d8, and the king gets out here. If white goes king d6, I check the king. If you take, I take the knight. If you go back, now I can even go rook b5 to try and play for more, but it is a draw. Instead here, I play the move rook to b5 instantly, and now after rook to a4, I'm simply losing the game. It's really unfortunate here. I guess rook h4 also works, but after rook to a4, if I move the king, there's knight d6 forking the rook. Literally, if my rook were on any other square, like c5, for example, I could get the king out, and I would be able to save the game, but the rook, unfortunately, is on the b5 square here, so I can't go king 8 because of knight d6 check, and when I go rook b8, now there's a move rook to h4, and here I very sadly have to resign the game. So if I go king e8, there's rook h8 check, winning the rook, and if I go king g8, there's knight e7, king f8, and rook h8, which is simply checkmate. So, very, very disappointing loss here. This, I would say, was probably the last real moment that I think I had a chance in this match. If I draw this game and I'm down by 1, the equilibrium remains pretty balanced, but I would lose this game. I think I lost the next game with white where I made a huge blunder in a much better position, and after that, it was pretty much over. So, I ended up losing this game. This would put me down by 2 points. I was down by 6 points after the 3+1 portion because I just lost a bunch of games in the Spanish. It really just was not meant to be today. Alireza was simply a better player. He was very, very precise when he had seconds left on the clock, which I think made a huge difference because even though I got advantage on the clock, Alireza was able to find great moves with 3-4 seconds, and he would win this match. So, a little bit disappointing on one hand, but what I would say, generally speaking, is I can't be too upset because I simply was not the better player today. Alireza, my opponent, played better than me. He was better than me in the openings. He was better in a lot of the critical moments as well with limited time on the clock. And so, it's unfortunate to lose like this, but that being said, I can't really be too unhappy because I lost to someone who simply played better. So, what does that mean for the event? That means that now I'm in the consolation match where I will play either Magnus Carlsen or Hans Niemann. Now, I haven't looked at the match in the last 20 or 30 minutes because I've been recording this recap, but last I saw, Magnus was up by a score of 2.5 to half. He probably is leading by more now, so most likely I'll play in the semifinal or the consolation final tomorrow against Hans Niemann, but we will wait and see. At any rate, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the semifinal match of the Speed Chess Championship. Of course, I will do a recap of my match tomorrow. Now, I am pretty tired after the match today, so I'm not sure if I'll get around to doing another recap of the Magnus match. But at any rate, I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with some more great recaps over the next day or two here from Paris. See you guys. Bye.